Hello, everyone. This is Carla Marie. For you, those of you that do not know me, I am a wife of almost 30 years. I am a mother of six children, author, speaker, family advocate all over the world. But one of my passions is to inspire moms in every season of their life. And so I want to talk to you about my newest project, which is Dear Lord, What's Next? And this book is about embracing the next phase of life as your kids launch into adulthood. Woo! Let me tell you, I'm right in the midst of this season. And right now, I am doing a series with amazing women, amazing moms that are reinventing themselves as they approach this season or right in the midst of this season. And so I am so excited to share this project with you. I hope that both the book as well as these particular interviews, we have five great interviews that will be airing throughout the month of April leading up to the launch of the book on April 26th. So stay tuned. Make sure you watch every single interview. I know that you'll find yourself in the book and in these interviews. But I want to read a little something before we get into our interview for today. And it is from chapter 1 called This Season. When you are a young mom, you hate hearing older, more experienced moms tell you how fast they grow and leave the nest. In my eyes, as a young mom, the days were at a standstill as I busied myself with the daily pull up changes, wiping butts and noses, picking up a growing pile of toys, and washing an exponentially transforming pile of laundry for a family of eight, with six kids under the age of 9. Homeschooling six kids um, was a never ending checklist of things to remember and teach. This speed they talked about was not my experience in the moment as a young mom. Now I'm that older mom, more experienced mom, admonishing others to take it all in. It really does go fast, even when it feels like bedtime cannot possibly come any sooner. And we're going to be talking about that and more with my guest today. But before I step into that, I want to talk a little bit about the season of life that I am in right now. I have six children, and I now have two children that are adults and outside of the home. I have two children that are adults and still at home. And I have one that is about to be an adult that is still at home, and a 16-year-old. And so we are at several stages, but that empty nest era, so to speak, is fast approaching. And so we want to talk about that with our guests in these interviews to kind of give moms an idea of what's next. Dear Lord, what's next? I want to introduce a very special person, Melanie Wilson. She is a believer, a wife, a mom of six, just like me, who she homeschooled. She's a clinical psychologist, an entrepreneur, author, and speaker. And I've had the privilege of being on her podcast several times in the past. And so I'm so excited to hear her wisdom that she has to share with moms that are in this journey and fast approaching this season of their life. Melanie, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation.
It is absolutely my pleasure. I love that you have written this book. And I mean, even before you wrote this book, you really had a heart for moms and their personal dreams and, their life alongside their motherhood. And I
Mhm.
have a passion for that too. And so I'm just thrilled to talk with you today.
Awesome. So, can you tell us just a little bit more about your family and your motherhood journey?
Sure. So, um, I can tell you that initially I planned to have 2.5 children,
Mm.
meaning 2 to 3.
Right.
Um, I was just going to see how it goes, and
Yeah.
I was planning on having 2 to 3 children. I was definitely not planning on homeschooling. And then when I put my baby into daycare just part-time. I thought this is ideal. I'm going to be a part-time mom and, just work part-time and still have my career. And my baby got an ear infection over and over and over. And I would have to cancel all of my appointments and take him home. And then as soon as he was healed, I would take him back and he would get another ear infection. And so my journey of staying home started then when I made the difficult decision to stay home. Well, initially, actually, I decided to just work 2 evenings a week because the Christian clinic where I was working as a psychologist said, "Hey, we'll take you anytime that we can get you." They had no women
Wow.
psychologists at the time. They had counselors, but not PhDs, and sometimes insurance required a PhD. So I said, okay, I would do that. But by the time I had my second child, I just thought, this is awful. I hated I hated having to, be away. I was having a relative watch the baby, and so I just decided to stay home. But I still had no intention of homeschooling. Like I thought that was weird, frankly.
Me too.
Yeah. And what I also think is hilarious is that I thought, I mean, these kids are just not going to be socialized, they're just not going to get social skills. And so I was very taken aback when I felt God calling me to homeschool. It's like, that is insane. And so I was in a Christian bookstore one day and I saw a book right there on display about homeschooling. And I thought, well, I'm going to read about it. And I was very impressed, especially um, for me because of the self-esteem. They were citing research in that book. Christine Field wrote that book so many years ago. And she cited research that showed that homeschooled kids had the best self-esteem of any group. And as a psychologist, and also someone who had been bullied in school, that
Mm.
was very important to me. But I still didn't want to do it. So, so I suggested it to my ultra social husband. Like he takes extroversion to a whole new level. And I thought he is going to say, no way. And I thought that's perfect. So that will put the end to that. And so I said, hey, I've been thinking about homeschooling. That would be great. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And so long story short, um, I was wrestling with, I knew God had called me to be a writer and a speaker and not necessarily a psychologist because it turns out that it wasn't just my child's health issues. It was also that I am an extrovert also, and being a one-on-one therapist is not the best job for an extrovert. We don't get to talk,
Yeah.
Carla. We don't get to talk at all. Uh, really. So I just thought there's no way that I can homeschool and write and speak too. And now, of course, the joke's on me because that is what I write and speak about.
Yeah.
Um, and it has, just as an introduction, it has ended up being the most fulfilling thing that I have done in my life. I would give up writing, which would be painful, but I would do it. I would give up writing and I would absolutely give up speaking for the sake of having the experience of homeschooling my children. And I know that you feel the same way because
Hmm.
it's such a fulfilling
Yes.
calling and profession to educate your own children. It's incredible. So I had that experience. And, since I was staying home and homeschooling, I mean, I might as well have more kids. And after I resolved a very serious disorganization problem, which I've spoken about at length, my husband and I both felt like I could handle more. At first, no, no. But later on, I felt like I could handle it. And then when I was still like, I would speak at women's retreats, I would do radio programs as a guest a lot. I wrote for a parachurch ministry, did a lot of I wrote for Women's Day. I got, I was able to keep my writing and speaking going when my kids were young, but I didn't start a business until my youngest was probably around middle school is when I got more serious about having a business.
Okay.
Um, so I can get you up to date now. So I have, you were saying how many kids, adult kids you have out of the house. I have three adult kids who are out of the house, employed. I have no, um, no marriages, no engagements even, no grandchildren at this point. I have one adult son who is living with us. We've had all of our adult kids live with us for at least a year to
Hmm.
save money so that they can, move out and feel like they have a good nest egg. Um, and then I have um, a daughter who is basically on a gap semester while she waits to get into X-ray tech school. She was going to do nursing. She was in college for that, and she changed her mind because of doing work, actual work in the
Hmm.
field. And I'm so proud of her that she
Yes.
realized, I don't want to do this. I said,
Right.
"Oh, okay, that's fine."
That's awesome.
It is. Yeah. So she is living in an apartment in the college town and working at the hospital in a different department, which she is enjoying a lot more. And then my youngest, talking about like my journey, kind of like as an empty nester, the thing that came up that was a challenge for me, honestly, was that um, my youngest had 2 more years of homeschool high school to go.
That's where I
Um,
am right now.
okay, okay. Um, well, maybe he only had, well, I forget if it was 2 or 1 year because he had already been taking classes at the community college, which we've had most of our kids do.
Hmm.
Um, but we realized that it made no sense to have him do 2 more years of homeschool high school at home when he is an advanced student and is very, very close to his siblings. So we made the decision along with him to send him to college a year early. He has a fall birthday, so he was only like under 18 for a few months. Um, but it has worked out beautifully. He lives with his second oldest brother, who is a physician's assistant in the college town, and they just get along famously. So it's just been wonderful. But it was a shock to me because it trimmed off a whole year that I was
Hmm.
expecting
Yeah.
to have a child at home. And so it's like, oh, okay. So it was an adjustment. And so now he is finishing his second year, just to tell you where we are
Hmm.
um, in the timeline. But
Hmm.
so that's it. And I have a business, but we can talk about that later. But
Yeah.
that's kind of like my story.
Yeah. That's awesome. And it's so similar to ours. I have one left that is 16. And his last 2 years he'll be spending at the local tech school, majoring in mechatronics engineering. And so, and he's like in his fourth year. He's gone now on a trip with his competitive robotics team for a competition. So, I mean, that's his thing. And again, like you said, you got to let him fly. It was very hard because I graduated three at one time, December 2023, and it left him alone. And I was used to doing things in groups. And so I was like, oh my gosh, having
Yeah.
one kid, I mean, I'm boring him to death. We're neither one of us are having fun. And so we work on a few things,
Mhm.
brushing up on reading and writing. And my husband works with him on, advanced math and things like that. But other than that, he'll be doing his last 2 years at the tech school. And so he's very
Mhm.
excited and we're excited for him. So
Yeah.
very similar. We were like,
Mhm.
okay, let's shift gears here. We didn't expect it, but it's
Mhm.
necessary. So, Very
Yes.
cool. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. Now, tell us more about how your relationship has changed. There's a section in the book, a chapter in the book called Parent to Advisor, from Parent to Advisor. Tell us how your relationship has changed with your children as they launched into adulthood, as they are young adults right now. What would you say are some of the main things that have changed?
Yes. So, I mean, I feel fortunate that I was exposed really pretty early on to some video training by Reb Bradley, where he talked about that very issue. And Reb is he's a is very, very strict
Okay.
with discipline. He's like the old school homeschool, like first time obedience, boom, 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 you know. And he had a major crisis in his life when he had teens and then young adults that convinced him he needed to switch gears and become more of, as you say, an advisor rather than the military general,
Yeah.
where just like boom, 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 this is what you're going to do.
Right.
Um, and so he he was very helpful to me.
Mm.
And so was, and I have spoken about this before, so was the fact that my oldest child is extremely strong-willed. And
Yours
and
too, huh?
yeah, yeah. And I have said honestly that his pushback and his rebellion saved our homeschool because I was on that, and it was all related to fear. And I know you write about that in your book too. I was so fearful that my kids were going to make mistakes, get caught up into, drugs or, just really bad influences, just all these things
Right.
that I was really controlling
Mm.
too much. And really apart from the control, it was the palpable fear.
Mm.
And
Yes.
and my son was great about calling me out on that, um like I can give you an example. He said, "Mom," he said, "you are so freaked out about the kids being exposed to porn." He said, if 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 they are, they're never going to tell you because you're so freaked about it. And I was like, okay, yeah, you have a point. You have a point. So he really helped me
Mm.
make that change to our homeschool, and I really took my hands off the reins a lot more at that point. And he was also one who, and when I, let me just say that when I say rebellion, he wasn't, you know, he wasn't running amok. Okay.
Right.
He wasn't doing things that everyone would agree, oh boy, you have a serious problem. It was more of an attitude. Um, but I also knew that many of his needs were not being met. So when he came to us um, as at the end of his sophomore year in high school and said, I would really like to go to high school. My husband and I both felt that it was a good thing for him to do that. And it proved to be a very good thing.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, he had this idea which just cracked me up, and it didn't matter how many times I tried to tell him that's not how this is. It's not how the world works. He didn't believe me. He had to experience it because he thought, Carla, that he was an advanced student, very advanced, and he thought he was going to go to high school and all these teachers were going to be so passionate about the subject that they were teaching. And all the students, I know, laugh. Go ahead and laugh. And even
After
more
teaching it 40
hilarious,
years.
and even more hilarious is like he thought all these students were just going to be like engaged and wanting to talk about it, having these great discussions
Like
about
we do at
literature and
home.
everything. And I mean, he got to experience it. He said, "Mom, there are kids in these honors classes and they're just playing games on their computer during class." It's like, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, not
And
surprised.
you had to zip your lips and not say, I told you so.
Oh gosh. But I mean, it was such a good thing. And he really single-handedly helped me to take my hands off the reins some. Not completely, of course.
Right.
It's like I'm never going to allow, I mean, I'm never going to go along with, and you talk about this in your book too. It's like I'm never going to just be like quiet when my kids are going to do something that's obviously dangerous, you know?
Right.
Obviously, no, I'm not. And but I mean, there have been times along the way where you have to negotiate. Um, like for my peace of mind, I would like my daughter to let me see her location on her cell phone. Well, she won't. She lets all of her close friends see
Yes. Oh,
exactly
yeah.
where she is, but not me. And she just says, Mom,
I have
just
one
call
of
my
those
friends.
too.
Really? Call my friends. Call my friends. It's like, that's ridiculous. But you know what? It's like that is her saying, I am an adult.
This is my
Um,
boundary.
I need to have that level of privacy. And it's like, okay, and so you you not only have to loosen up on the reins as your kids get older, not just adults. You don't want to, and I know you already know this. I'm speaking to the people listening to us. You don't want to be like tight, 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 and then oh, you're 18. Whew.
Right.
That's
That's
that is
scary.
not going to go well.
Right.
Um, but so you got to loosen up, but then there's so much negotiating that has to happen. Um, and it's really, I think it's a very interesting time of life. And it's exciting and it's enjoyable. And the thing
And
that,
terrifying.
well, that yes, yes. But then we go back to, what you have said too, is like you do a lot of praying. You have to entrust them to God. And I have to remind myself over and over and over that God loves them more than I do.
Yes.
That is the truth.
Yes.
So I entrust them to him. And really, it's kind of funny, hilarious even that I think I even have control over them because I don't.
Isn't that interesting
Yeah,
how
yeah.
and I think it was, when was it? I think it was when my older two became preteens or early teens, like 13, 14 years old. And I was like, oh my God, I'm losing control. As if I ever really had it, right?
You're
But
right.
it was an aha moment that I did not like. That
Mhm,
literally, these are not robots. And
mhm,
they're not remote controls. And I mentioned that in the book. And they are free will beings, whether we like it or not. And our job is literally to plant seeds and trust God with their lives. Like you said, He loves them more than we do. But it was around about that time when my oldest two were 13 and 14 that I was like, oh my gosh. And I have done things a lot different with the younger four than I did with the older two because of that.
mhm,
Um, with technology emerging and all those kinds of things, it was terrifying. We as parents have to navigate some areas that our parents didn't have to. But
mhm.
they always had something that was scary. There was the radio, then there was TV and Elvis, and then there was all these things that represented, a distasteful life. Um, and then you had the internet, and then now cell phones, and it's like, oh my gosh,
I
every
know. So right.
generation you know, you just wonder what our kids will be faced with and what they'll have to parent through. But
Correct.
yes,
Hmm.
I thank you for sharing that, you know,
Sure.
and that resource, you know, the gentleman that you talked about, because uh you might, some of moms out there, you may be militant parents that
Hmm.
expect, you know, first time obedience, you know, and you have a kid that is way outside that box. If you want to continue a relationship with that child into adulthood, you're going to have to make some adjustments big time.
Hmm.
So I wanted to mention that leads right into one of the things I wanted to talk about, which was chapter 4, letting go. And letting go for parents is not the easiest thing to do. And as a matter of fact, I wrote a book about it called Let Go, um, a, uh, a control freak's fight for peace. And
Mm.
that peace comes when you do let it go and allow God to take over situations that you're trying to control or that you think that you're controlling, but you're really not. And so, Melanie, let's talk about that a little bit. What your personal struggles were with letting go in this season and how you overcame them.
Hmm. Boy, you know, I'm thinking about um relationships that my kids were involved in. Um, and one of the first ones that was very, very concerning to me. I mean, right from the get-go, I was like, woo, there are so many red flags here.
Yes. Isn't
I
that
mean,
hard?
yes. And
Um,
on paper, it looked perfect. But in reality, it was like, wowza.
yeah.
And I mean, it was so upsetting. And what I remember clearly is this I'll just say girl because it won't people won't know who I'm talking about because
Right.
I have five boys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Only
yeah.
one girl? I didn't know that.
Hmm.
What's
Yeah.
interesting is that one of the moms that I'm interviewing has 6 girls and one boy.
Oh, okay. Well, we can get together.
Yeah.
Um, well, so this girl was visiting, and it was, I think, maybe for the second time, and I had already seen some red flags, and um, there were, I mean, I think Beth Moore was like, it was like Six Flags over Texas. I mean, it was like so many red flags flying. Um, and I excused myself to go to the grocery store. And when I was in the parking lot, I said, okay, Lord, the enemy is trying to use this to get between me and my son, and
Yes.
I'm not going to let it happen. I am not going to say a word, not a word.
That's
And
awesome.
I did, all I did was pray and pray and pray and pray. And of course, I think it is so important. And I doubt that anyone listening to us would not agree with this, but it is just so important to be loving and kind because um, we're talking about potential spouses and
Right.
relationships. Um, so many of these people who are struggling, they either aren't believers or they're not walking with the Lord
Right.
at the current time. And so, you know, we may be the only exposure that they have in their lives at this time to um, a representative of Christ, you
Right.
know, a Christ follower. And so we don't want to be like, hey, stay away from my kid,
Right.
which is what we really
You know,
want
you
to,
want to say,
what you want to
I've
say.
been there, done that so
I
many
know
times.
you have. But we want to be, we want to use it
Mhm.
for that, you know, it's not by accident. I think that's a thing too.
Mm,
It's not by accident. God arranged it, or should I say, allowed it,
right.
because He didn't always arrange it, but He is allowing it
Mm.
for a purpose, and we want to use it for His glory. And so, you know, it was so. it has been interesting to me, like when um, relationships, those relationships have ended, and then to see my kids be able to talk with me about it because now I'm not an adversary,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
They aren't gonna come to me thinking that I'm gonna say, I told you so,
Right.
because I never told them. And as you so wisely put in your book, it's like you have to continue that submissive, humble attitude into, even though I don't have engaged or married kids or grandkids, I can see that I'm going to have to continue that heart attitude
Yeah.
into the future. And I'm so glad that I have learned that lesson. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to get it perfectly. I'll probably open my big yap a few times when I shouldn't.
And,
Um,
sometimes it's, and when they ask, and a lot of times when my kids ask my opinion on relationships or something that I normally keep quiet about, I ask them, do you really want to know what I think? Because I'm like, this is your chance to back out of this conversation because once you say yes, I'm going to share.
I'm going for it.
You open the door, I'm walking in. So I'm going to give you another chance to shut it. It's funny because yes, I have a daughter that is engaged that will be married later this summer, and a son that has been close and then decided not to because of red flags. And Dad and I saw them. We didn't say much about it, like you said, and the seeds that we had planted years prior came to fruition and did their work in their
Mhm.
heart and in their mind, and they saw those red flags eventually themselves. So
Right.
but that is such a good um, way of looking at it, and what you did, leaving the scenario, because sometimes things can be so overwhelming, you feel like you're going to burst, you know, and leaving the situation and allowing God to enter your heart instead of the anger, showing itself. I
Mhm.
think it's so smart. A lot of moms can learn from that because it is very easy when we feel, especially as a mama bear, you feel like your family, like your nest is being attacked. You're ready to fight.
Mhm.
Um, and so sometimes just stepping back, letting go, and praying is the best way to do it. So learn from that.
Yeah, right, right. Exactly.
What would you say before we switch gears here? I have one more question along these lines. What would you say is your greatest aha moment when it comes to having adult children? Like, what
Oh.
has been like, oh, I get it.
Hmm. Um, I don't know if it's like um my greatest aha moment, but it's something that surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is that I had to check my expectations of how often I would see my adult children.
Ooh.
So I have an adult son who lives here in the same town with me, which I am so grateful for. And I have been disappointed by the by how often we see him.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, whenever we have disappointments, it's almost always based on our expectations that we haven't, even acknowledged to ourselves. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I expected. And of course, I never told him. It's like, well, I expect to see you this often. And of
Right.
course, it wouldn't even be appropriate for me to see that.
Right.
As a strong-willed person, he would be like, oh, let's see how that goes.
Right. See you next Christmas, Mom.
Right. So that has been a surprise,
Mm.
and it's not just been with him. My second son lives out of town, so that's just more. I just don't have that many expectations for how often I'm going to see him. But the most recent son who moved out, um, he, I could tell that he was already. I don't know what I said to him about seeing him or whatever. But he was very defensive right from the get-go. And he said, I mean, I live on my own and like, okay, we're fine. I'm not
Love
upset.
ya.
Yeah, right. So that was a surprise to me. I guess I didn't realize that that was something that had to be kind of thought through, and also just to make peace with um your adult kids might not want to be with you as much as you might want to be with them.
Right.
And it honestly, I know because I've had some really good conversations with my oldest son about this. I know it's not because he doesn't love us.
Right.
Just it's just kind of like his personality and his lifestyle. It's just kind of how he rolls.
And it's a season too, because
Right.
I remember being in that age
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
season, and you're just figuring things out and building a life, and you're I think it's when you get older, probably past 30, that you're like, I love my mom and dad. I will miss my
Yeah.
mom and dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want my
Right.
mom and dad.
Yeah.
And you get my age and you're like, I wish them, with my mom, I
Right.
wish it was still here.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
so
Right.
things like that. I think it's a season too for
It
some of our
is.
kids. One of
Hmm.
my sons just returned from Japan. And so
Yeah.
that was very hard for me. I had never had sent someone off across the world. He's back in the States now, but he's in Washington State. So I hadn't
Okay.
seen him for 18
Wow.
months, and he surprised me in January and
Oh,
came home. So that
I
was very
love it.
special. But and I
Yes.
know that my kids have big aspirations, and they
Hmm.
they were raised to be curious about the world. So who knows where they'll be 10 years from now. And I just
Right.
have to try to build a relationship with each of them in a way
Hmm.
that works for the two of us, right? Or, my
Right.
husband and I. So um, you were talking about, your greatest aha, so to speak, or realization of that expectation. For me, it was getting rid of the need to fix their mistakes or their problems, because I've always wanted to fix it, make it better,
Yeah.
turn it around, you know, become victorious over it, for them, you know. And I, surprisingly so, and my husband helps me with this because I'm a work in progress. I can't say that I'm already always all the way there, but I have, you know, gotten to the point where I step back, I let go, and I resist the urge to try to fix every problem that they have
Hmm.
and have a solution for every issue that arises.
Right.
And in that, I've seen some really amazing, problem solving skills and creativity and, humility in them as they navigate the world in new circumstances. So that's pretty cool. Um,
That is.
so let's switch gears here. We talked all about motherhood and all that stuff. Now let's talk about
Yeah.
you. Let's talk about
Okay.
Melanie. Um,
Yeah.
can you share some of the dreams that you and your husband had a decade ago when it came to the season when you were just sitting back and it was so far away, and how those have changed, recently or in the current time?
Yeah. Um, I really appreciated the chapters in your book on marriage, and I feel like um that is one of the greatest blessings that I have is that I do have a strong marriage. I would really be struggling if I did not. And I know many women who are struggling in that regard, even in this season of life. So I do think it makes a big difference. But the truth is, my husband and I did not have like all these dreams, and then we pushed the pause button and had these kids that we homeschooled, and then now we can push the play button. The truth is, we have left that play button going. So we have taken trips together throughout our marriage. My husband worked for a company, still does, but for many, many years, his company's business meeting was in Cancun
Wow.
and in January.
Yay.
And so we had to pay extra for me to go. But unless I was nursing a brand new baby or very pregnant, I went along. And I feel like that really, really helped our marriage a lot. We definitely have had, we go out and do things. It was harder in the childcare years because we did not have parents who were available or able
6 kids.
to watch the kid. Well, right. But to watch the kids. But we had nieces, we had some neighbors. And so arranging childcare was a little bit more challenging, but my husband's a salesman, and so I would just put him on it and he would find somebody. Um, but that just made a world of difference. And I really don't, I mean, we are doing things now, like I'm very excited because we are going on a river cruise trip
Mm,
this year in France with
wow.
with my husband's brother and his
That's
wife.
awesome.
And that is something that we would not have done, when we had
Yeah.
young kids at home. Um, but I just feel like it's just been a continuation. My husband has no plans on retiring soon, or very soon. He thinks he's much younger than he is, so that's that's part of it. He's older than I am, so that's
Uh-huh.
why I'm saying that.
Mine
Uh,
is too.
oh, is he? Okay,
10
so my
years.
husband, how much?
10.
My husband's 8.5 years older. That is
Really?
crazy. We have so many similarities. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he doesn't plan on retiring very, very soon. So we're just kind of continuing. Um, One thing I have noticed that we're doing, which I'm very happy about, is we're planning more social things. So we
That's
have
awesome.
couples who we are friends with who are also empty nesters. I really don't like that term. Really, I don't. And I'll tell you why, because it just sounds like
Like you're done.
no, it's not even that. It sounds like it sounds depressing. It's like like it's a loss. It's like it's not
Yeah.
a loss.
Right.
It's still like my house is not empty. We still live here. I have two dogs. I have an adult son living with us, and my family and friends are over here all the time. So my nest
Right.
really isn't empty. So that's
Right.
why I don't really like that term. But they have adult children too, and so that has really been great. It has made this season of life more enjoyable for
That's
sure.
awesome. That's awesome. It's funny. We've only ever had one major plan, and that was to travel the world.
Hmm.
And we each had the opportunity to do that at different seasons in our lives separately. I own an organization that takes me all over the world, and long before we even got married, he had was in the Marines, and so he had traveled, many places. After we got married, we went a few places, but um, our goal is together to
Yes.
enjoy, exploring the world together. And that's so we've never really had a list or a bucket list, so to speak. Maybe a bucket list of places to go, things to do,
Hmm.
but
Sure, sure.
um, but our main thing in this next season was just to enjoy each other and enjoy exploring the world. That's our main thing. So,
Yeah,
very similar.
right.
You had mentioned early on, I want to talk about the subject of chapter 8. What do you really want? And I think it's chapter 9 that talks about doing something now. And you talked
Hmm.
about when you were, and this is for moms that are in the midst still of whether you're working outside the home, at home, homeschooling, working at home, whatever your scenario is, this is for all moms. Um, there are things that you can be doing. I talk about in several of my books, you're in either one of two seasons, which is either preparation or go time. And you talked about some of the things that you kept going all of that time to build your skills and stay relevant and current. And um, can you expound on that briefly,
Yeah, sure.
to kind of share with moms some ideas? They may want to go back to school, they may want to start a business, they may want to get training and this, that, or the other thing.
Right.
Share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I I have been preaching about um being appropriately selfish for a long time. And by that I mean like I never felt guilty about hiring a mother's helper. It was our niece
Mhm.
when my kids were little, 1 day a week. So I could just get out and do the things that I wanted to do. And my husband was amazing in, taking over with the kids so that I could finish a writing project or go and speak. But he was also, I will just say, I so appreciate that he was kind of like my booking agent when it came to speaking. And sometimes he would go, "Nope, you're not doing that one.
Mhm.
You'll be gone too long." And it's just not worth it. And he was really right. And I'm so thankful for his protection in that regard. Because I could really go off the rails, you know, do way too
I
much
agree.
stuff. Like one day, this just occurred to me that I think is so funny. 2 weeks after I had a baby, I was running around making this really fancy meal for a new mom. He's like, "What are you doing? You
Yeah.
just had a baby and
I'm
you're
3 weeks post a hysterectomy, and my husband's like, "Why did you schedule all of these interviews when you're supposed to be on your back?"
recovering." Right. Oh my goodness. Exactly. And so, I mean, that is a wonderful thing. But um, I never, I never just dropped everything
Mhm.
that I wanted to do. What I have said to moms is that I knew I could not have 6 children that I homeschooled if I did that. That's just who I am. It's like I would have been depressed,
Yeah.
honestly, and depressed and just like low energy, just not very engaged. And I don't think it would have done a service to my children. My children have seen me having a family, a
Mhm.
big family, and homeschooling and doing things that I am passionate about as an
Yes.
individual. And my prayer is that that will encourage them to have that kind of a lifestyle too. Yes, you make your family a priority, but you and as you say, your dreams are also very important, not just because of your own self, but because of the people that you're serving and because
Right.
your children are watching. And so that has never, never been a problem for me. I will say though, that I tried to be like a big blogger, like a consistent blogger. I tried
Yeah.
writing
Me too.
books. Like I'm going to write a book, and it just wasn't the time. And that doesn't mean that you're lazy, that you're just, that you're just not consistent enough or whatever. You don't have the self-control
It's
to
all
do
about the
it.
seasons.
It's the season.
Yeah.
Because when it was the season, it was like boom. It
Right.
just it just happened. So don't, and the other thing is this I just marvel at. So I was a scrapbooker
Mhm.
from the very beginning. I was a scrapbooker when I was a child. Once I had a baby, then I really got into it. And so then I started getting into digital scrapbooking.
Oh,
I
wow.
had no idea that little hobby of mine, digital scrapbooking, would allow me to format my own book before it was even like a big thing. Like I
Uh-huh.
published a book with CreateSpace when they very first started. Like
Wow.
as soon as they came online, I published with them and I was able to like, just figure it out because of that
Uh-huh.
experience. So what I am saying to moms is that everything that you're doing, God can use that
Yes.
um, to help you in the next phase of your life. And let me just say, Carla, I loved what you had to say about the difference between purpose and like a
Seasons.
particular a season. Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm.
Uh, so it's, I don't have a, like my purpose is not just to be a podcaster, or
Right.
it's not just to write curriculum or whatever. My purpose is so much bigger
Mhm.
than that. But what is exciting is figuring out what God has for me in each of these seasons. And I'm excited for the moms who are listening to us to discover that too.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
that's kind of how I see it. And then as I mentioned, um, I was actually I was actually stuck because I had this dream of I want to write um curriculum,
Mm.
homeschooling curriculum. I didn't know how to do that. I looked for books on how to write homeschool curriculum. Well, there is no such thing. There still isn't such a thing. Uh,
Wow.
and so I just had to do it. I just had to do what I thought made sense, but I was getting stuck. And so what I did, because I went to this bloggers conference and this woman spoke and she talked about how she wasn't writing curriculum per se, but she would create these printable products and she was very successful at it.
Mhm.
And so she was offering her services as a coach. And I thought, I want that. And so I hired her as my coach. And she said, I think you need a quick win. And so then she helped me get my book, The Organized Homeschool Life, published. And that really gave me some confidence. And then I went
That's
on
awesome.
and published the first volume of Grammar Galaxy, my story-based language arts curriculum. And what has been amazing too is that, and that I want to say to encourage other moms is that my husband and my kids really came alongside me and were encouraging to
That's
me, helped
awesome.
me,
That's so
you know,
helpful.
it really is. And I think no matter what you decide to do, your family will be there. And
Mhm.
then I do just want to say one other thing. This is not based on my experience, but on a very good friend of mine who is in this very season. Um, she she got some extra education. She has
Mm.
one homeschooled child left at home. She signed up for this free course. It was basically like a programming type course. It was super, super hard for her. She didn't want to do it.
Wow.
After she got it,
Yeah.
says, I don't want to do this as a job. Okay, okay, that's okay.
Right.
Well, that job or her training actually led her to finding a position that was actually more in line with what she wanted to do.
Wow.
Um, there were problems with that too. That led her to turn around and seek um, a counseling degree. So she gets into this program.
Wow.
She starts doing it. I know. She starts doing it. She didn't want to do it. She wanted to quit. Okay, that is okay.
It
And
is.
nothing has been lost. She has learned. It's just like homeschooling.
Yeah.
Education is
We teach
never
our kids to try new things. It's okay for us
education
to
is
do it
never
too.
wasted. Right, right. I don't know what God is going to do with those. And it doesn't have to incorporate everything that she's learned. But she is just an amazing mom, and she is going to keep seeking for what God has for her. And I mean, even that process that she has been going through is witnessing to her kids about
Yeah,
how to live your life, right?
absolutely.
So
That's
anyway, I just
so
want to say that
awesome.
it's not like, oh, I'm just going to try this and ooh, it's the thing.
That,
It's not necessarily.
that leads to, how I wanted to wrap up the interview today. Um, it's really the topic of chapter 14 in this book, and that is unplanned, unexpected, and unfortunate detours. And so I wanted to read really quickly an excerpt from that particular chapter before we wrap up. Um, I wish I could tell you that every plan you make and every dream you have will go exactly the way you envisioned it. It would be delightful if we could perfectly orchestrate our future and everything in our lives to line up with our lists of goals, deadlines, and expectations, because don't we have a lot of those? It's
Yes.
just not realistic. So, yes, this book is about planning, dreaming, and determining what you want the next season of your life to look like. However, if you do not remain flexible, humble, and open to detours that show up in a way that you did not expect, then you may miss out on the blessings of those detours and give up on the final outcome altogether. And
Hmm.
so, what you just said was exactly, the topic of that chapter is that we encourage our kids to try new things. And this is a season for mom to try new things. And everything may not, be on all cylinders. Some things you may try and say, not so much. And other things, aha moments and bells and whistles go off and you go, you just take off running with it. And so I just encourage all the moms that are reading the book, that are listening to these interviews, to think about what you really want out of this next season of your life, whether it's fast approaching or you're in the midst of it. Melanie and the other ladies that I've had the conversation with, I think that you can find yourself in these interviews and be able to really understand what it is that you want, what direction you want, and what you don't want. And so, Melanie, you have been so helpful today, so much wisdom. And I thank you for everything that you shared, because I think a lot of people are going to be blessed by it. I wanted to mention that in the back of every chapter, Carla style, there are questions for you to kind of work through some of the topics in those chapters. I don't like just having a quick read, one and done, and then you forget about what you just took in. I like to challenge people to make changes and to challenge themselves. And so you'll find that in the back of every chapter. And I hope that's a blessing to everyone that reads the book as well. Again, it is Dear Lord, What's Next? Embracing the next phase of life as your kids launch into adulthood. What's next for you, mama? There's the sky is the limit. Just as you encourage your children, the sky is the limit for you in this next season as well. And it will be available on Amazon on April 26th. All of these interviews will air during the month of April leading up to the launch. And thank you so much, Melanie. I really appreciate it. And stay tuned. To everyone as we move forward and launch this book. It has taken me longer to write this book than any of my other books. This is my 11th book since 2018, and it has taken me longer to launch this one, just because we had some blips and unfortunate and circumstances that took us time to work through, but I think it makes it that much richer and that much more relatable to people in different situations and circumstances. So I know that it'll be a blessing to you. And again, thank you, Melanie, for joining me today.
It was my honor. Thank you
I
so
really
much.
appreciate it.